Hello, welcome. I'm glad you came. Please have a seat. We're going to have a bit of a tasting today, and I understand that you're sort of climbing the corporate ladder. Yes, I understand. And because of that, you're going to be attending far more business dinners and interacting with executives, right? Yes, it is an international company, so you're going to be bumping into people that you wouldn't normally. Right, I completely understand. So, it's nice to know the difference between several standard types of wine. And also, it just allows you to be a better consumer of wine. And so we're going to have this private session today. And in this session, we're going to talk about red and white wines. I'm going to teach you how to taste them properly and how to pick out some of the notes and aromas that are in each individual variety, how to pair them with certain foods, and even show you some that are in your price range. We talked about what your price range was, so that you can better familiarize yourself on your own. So let's get started, shall we? So you'll notice that the table is covered with a white tablecloth. That's not on accident. We use a white tablecloth on purpose so that you can better see the color and the variance in the wine when we look at it, and that's all part of the tasting process. So I have decanted several different wines. We're going to start with the reds. What I want to show you is how to taste it properly. You'll notice that I've set out for you a wine glass. You'll notice also that the bowl of the glass is quite large. Not as large as a brandy glass, but large nonetheless. The reason for this is that you're going to only put a small amount in the bottom of the glass, and we're going to be smelling it and looking at it. So let's get started. What we're looking at first is a red wine, but this one in particular is a Merlot. And the reason we're only putting a small amount in the glass is because of how it is that we're going to look at it. So what you're going to do is take your glass by the stem, tilt it till it's almost perpendicular to the table. Hold it over the table so that when you look through the side of the glass, the only thing behind it is the white tablecloth. Very good. I want you to look at the wine. Notice the variation in the color. In the very center where it's deepest, it should be a dark, rich color. In this case, a very dark sort of purple. Right. And as it comes out toward the edge, you can see that it is sort of pink in this case. Right, with the Merlot. Now what you want to watch for with a red wine is that it's not brown at the edge. If it is too old. You don't want to drink it. Right. Yeah, nobody wants that. Okay, so now the next step is to smell the wine. Now, your gut instinct is going to be to just stick your nose in there and smell it, but what I want you to do first is swirl it around the glass. Just move the glass in a circular motion. You'll see that the wine will sort of swirl. Right, very good. Perfect. What this does is aerate the wine, helps encourage the smell. Then you are going to put your nose into the glass. Take a deep smell, deep sniff. Very good. Notice how it smells. This brings it up, right? You've got to be able to smell it to taste it appropriately. Very good. Okay, now this next part is a little strange. What you're going to do, pardon me, what you're going to do is take a bit of the wine into your mouth. You're going to draw air over it. It's going to sound very much like slurping, right? Yeah. If it were soup, that would be really inappropriate. But for the sake of the tasting, okay, I'll demonstrate. Okay. Right. So you're going to take the wine in, you're going to run the air over top of it, and what this is going to do is draw the aroma of the wine to your olfactory bulb, which is where the taste is sort of blossomed. It interacts with your sense of smell, right, and it develops so that you can pick up all the different flavors of the wine. You'll notice that I did not swallow it, right? Obviously, for the sake of a tasting, we're going to be sampling many different kinds of wine, and you don't want to swallow it, or, well, you may end up on the floor. So we're going to spit it out, as rude as that seems, and move on to the next wine. Okay, so let's talk about this Merlot. Merlot in itself is a fruity, sort of easy drinking, juicy wine for a red. It's softer, it's less tannic, which means it doesn't have that drying after feeling when you drink it, sort of like a tea that's been steeping too long. It's more fruity, it has more roundness. There's a high sugar content, which typically means there's a higher alcohol content, and it's usually aged in oak. Merlot is very good for richer foods. It has notes of plum and black cherries, nutmeg, sometimes clove, and even a hint of maybe chocolate. It's a strange thing to say about a wine, but you can sort of feel it in there. A very good example, well, actually some of the best Merlots that are in your price range come from California in the Napa Valley. The one we're drinking now is a 2001 Duckhorn Vineyards estate. It's grown in the Napa Valley, retails for about $80 a bottle. You like it? Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and have a drink of water. Good. This next wine that we're going to sample is a Cabernet Sauvignon, fashionably called Cab, and it's often actually blended with a Merlot because a Cabernet Sauvignon has a much higher tannin, which means it has more of that drying power and can often have a very heavy oak note to it. These are blended with Merlot always in Bordeaux to improve the richness and roundness of the wine. It's full-bodied. It's very in-your-face, almost a chewy wine, and it can be overpowering for a meal. So most of the time it's served on its own, just purely for the enjoyment of the wine, or with a big heavy steak. Beef tends to hold up well. Cabernet Sauvignon is big in the Napa Valley, but it also is a rather popular wine in Bordeaux. It has a blackberry, blackcurrant, cassis sort of note. Sometimes, even especially coming from the Napa Valley, you have a hint of mint and eucalyptus. There's a smoky, toasty aroma and even a little bit of vanilla. So let's sample some of this. This is a 2009 Hall Jack's Masterpiece from the Napa Valley. It's a big, inky, rich wine, but we'll talk about that after you taste it. Retails for about $110. Okay. So we're going to aerate, so swirl. Very good. You're getting this down. And have a sniff. You smell it, don't you? Yeah, kind of the cherry almost. And have a sip. Okay. Do you taste it? Right. There's that chocolate we were talking about. Bit of blackberry and cherry, but you can see what I mean about the richness. It's quite heavy. Very good. Good. Okay, so now this next and actually last red wine that we're going to talk about is a Pinot Noir. Pinot normally comes from Burgundy in France, but a lot of them now tend to come from Oregon or California. So let's talk about go ahead and have a sip of water while I explain. Pinot Noir from Oregon and California typically is a luscious, fruity, dark wine. And from Burgundy, it's lighter, earthy, more acidic. It's native to France and just recently been picked up here in the States. It's very expensive, usually largely due to small lots being grown, and actually it's a very old wine. The way the story goes, the monks used to grow it in Burgundy, and it was sold to the hierarchy, royalty, and the upper echelon of the church. So, a very old, established wine. Burgundy is, the Burgundy Pinot Noir is sophisticated and complex, almost seductive, and very multi-layered. There's a sense of mushroom, maybe leather, dry leaves. It's quite silky. It's lighter on the palate, less fruity, much higher acidity, and that's why it pairs so well with food. Has a bit of a strawberry, raspberry, or cherry aroma. The one that we're going to be tasting today is a 2005 Louis Chateau Chevrolet. It's a $40 bottle of wine. It is one of the most well-known and respected producers in Burgundy. And this particular wine is quite smoky and earthy at first, but it's going to open up into a dark raspberry aroma that tends to hang around. So I want you to see if you can sense that. So let me pour you some here. Good. Okay. Go ahead and tilt your glass. Take a look. Right. You can see it right away, the difference from the Merlot. We didn't do that. Yeah. It's very nice. Okay, swirl. Let's go go ahead and aerate the wine. Deep breath. Right, yeah, you can smell the fruitiness. And let's have a sip. You sense it too. Yeah, it's very good. It's a very good wine, and at $40 a bottle, it's really not too expensive. So that is a Burgundy from France. Now, this next one that we're going to sample is also a Pinot Noir, and it is from Oregon. So let's pour some here. Good. Pinots that are from Oregon or California are often fruitier, darker, more concentrated, and therefore have a higher alcohol content. You're going to notice sort of a strawberry jam that's sort of richer, sugarier strawberry, plum, or even a Bing cherry. This particular bottle is a 2010 Archery Summit Premier Cuvée Willamette Valley from Oregon. And let's take a look. You can see it's just a little bit differently colored than the Burgundy was, right? Okay, aerate the wine. Take a deep breath. Smell it. Yeah, it's just a little different. Let's have a sip. Many layers in this one. It has additional nuances of things like lilac. There's a little bit of allspice, maybe some marzipan, the almondy flavor, right? There's a rich black cherry. It's quite dense and intense. Yeah, right. Almost succulent. It's a good wine. Okay. So those are our red wines. Do you feel comfortable with those? Good. Which one did you prefer? The Pinots, yeah. Yeah, I do too. Unfortunately, because they're usually more expensive. But they are really nice. Very good. Okay. We're going to move on now to white wine. My personal choice, 9 times out of 10, is a white wine. A lot of people prefer red. Obviously, when you're dining, you're going to choose based on what you're eating. Red wines are better for heavier meals. White wines typically move much better with a light meal. But we'll talk about that with each individual kind. The first one we're going to talk about is a Chardonnay. There are many different kinds of Chardonnay. Typically, on the whole, they're a full-bodied wine with buttery and sort of vanilla flavors. Sometimes they are oak-aged, but there's also a new trend in unoaking a Chardonnay from a couple different schools of thought. One is that it has a much more crisp, mineral, almost flinty aroma, and the other school of thought is that we won't be destroying trees to make barrels. So it depends on how you lean for that. So the benefit of an oak-aged Chardonnay is that it is clean, crisp, refreshing, and has minimal aroma on its own, which means that it's easily manipulated by the winemaker. Cooler climates tend to lead to a medium to high acidity and notes of apple, pear, citrus, almost flinty. Warmer climates lead to a lower acidity, fuller body, much higher alcohol content. The notes include things like tropical fruit aromas, things that you don't get from a cooler climate. If I had to suggest, I'd say try one from the region of Chablis in France. This particular Chardonnay is typically lighter in body, so it's paired well with lighter foods such as salads and vegetables or a simple grilled fish. The one we're going to be tasting today is a 2010 Acero Don Miguel vineyard. It's an unoaked Chardonnay from the Russian River Valley. We're going to taste it, and then we'll see kind of what you think of it. Alright. Pour. Okay. Let's take a look at it. You can kind of see it's much more yellow. Right. Yeah, quite clear. And aerate. And smell. Yeah, I prefer the smell of a white wine. Okay, let's have a sip. It's good. It's really quite unbelievable. This Chardonnay in particular is an unoaked Chardonnay because it's so incredibly rich and creamy. So this is a good choice for people that prefer unoaked Chardonnay for the ethical reason. It's sort of layered with tropical fruits, peaches, Asian pears. There's almost even an oatmeal cookie quality to it. Right. This is really, in my opinion, one of the best unoaked Chardonnays there is. Let's move on to an oaked Chardonnay. I want you to catch the difference between the two. The first time you try an oaked Chardonnay, I'm going to suggest that you try one from California. If you're going to try a French one from the village of Meursault in Burgundy. Okay, not all wines that come from Burgundy are red. Right? Yeah, I didn't know that originally either. But these white Chardonnays usually go quite well with buttery dishes and saucy dishes. So fish and shellfish, chicken, roasted or in a cream sauce. Okay. This oaked Chardonnay is a Rombauer 2011 Chardonnay Carneros. It's a Napa Valley Chardonnay and one of the biggest sellers. It's textbook, it's rich and full-bodied, quite classic. But we'll talk about the aromas after you've tasted it here. Let's pour. Good. And take a look. It does have a slightly different color, doesn't it? Yeah. And swirl. Deep breath. Good, right? Sip. You forgot to spit. and there's that buttery quality. Yeah, it's kind of strange in a wine, isn't it? Very good. No, I'm glad you liked it. So now we're going to talk about a couple different kinds of the same wine. There is a Pinot Gris, which is typically grown in France, and a Pinot Grigio, which is Italian. In California and Oregon, they grow both. First, we'll talk about a French Pinot Gris. It is typically a fuller-bodied wine, lower in acidity, deeper in color, higher in alcohol content. The aromas typically include ripe fruit and melon, which appeals to a lot of people, and it's quite a concentrated wine. The wine that we're going to be tasting is a 2005 Pinot Gris Vinal Viognier from Alsace. Alsace. I'm not good with French. But let's have a taste. Okay. Very good. Take a look. Yeah, still different even than the Chardonnay. Lighter almost. Okay, let's aerate the wine. Very good. And sip. Oh, smell. Let's aerate the wine. And smell. Smell it. Right. Has a very definite fruitiness, doesn't it? And you can really get the melon. Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Good, I'm glad you like it. So, in California and Oregon, like I said, they have both. You can have a Pinot Gris or a Pinot Grigio that comes from that region. Typically, they're quite lemony. As I said, in Oregon and California, they grow both Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio. They have sort of a lemony apple, pear note, sometimes an exotic fruit. It's definitely more floral, and they can even go so far as to have a buttery, creamy, almost vanilla aroma to them. And when it's aged in oak, it can get quite almondy. So what we're going to look at today from California, actually from Sonoma, is a 2009 Wingap Pinot Gris from the Windsor Oaks Vineyard in Chalk Hill. Take a look at the color. It's a little bit different, isn't it? Which is to be expected. Swirl. Take a deep breath. You smell it? It's almost spicy. Okay, have a taste. Okay, let's have a taste. What do you think? Right. Has some pretty enticing aromas. Strawberry, pear, jasmine is one of my favorites. It's quite juicy, almost spicy, but also quite dry and expansive. It has good depth. It's a little tangy and it has a persistent finish. Right, very good. Right, you still get that spiciness that stays behind. Yeah, I quite like it, actually. And it's a Pinot Gris. Good. So now let's talk about the Grigios. Like I said, Pinot Grigio typically comes from Italy. It's much lighter in body, but higher in acidity, lighter in color, lower in alcohol content. You're going to note that there's the aroma of apple, pear, citrus fruits, which is very much like Pinot Gris, but also that you're going to sense some stone fruit, maybe like peach, and it can sometimes be sort of chalky or flinty in flavor. The one we're going to sample is a 2008 Tenuta Luisa Pinot Grigio. It's a $23 bottle of wine. It's not very expensive, but let's have a taste and see what you think. Okay. And pour. Okay. Yeah, much paler wine. And let's aerate. Smell. I like this one. Yeah. And let's go ahead and have a sip. Almost hate to spit it out. Right. There's definitely an apple aroma, almost like apple pie. And there's just the hint of cream. It's quite full-bodied. And almost a toffee aftertaste. It's quite strange. The finish is lovely, isn't it? Yeah. Both Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio pair well with fish, especially when grilled, pasta with seafood, and even chicken that's been roasted or poached. Okay. We're down to our final type of white wine. Final type of wine for today anyway. Sauvignon Blanc wines are usually a pale yellow, almost a greenish color. They're light to medium bodied, although high in acidity. Very crisp and refreshing. They can have several different aromas, some of which are cut grass, which doesn't sound very appetizing but is pleasing to the nose. Herby, gooseberries, grapefruit, sometimes lemon or lime, and even better, honeydew and or melon. New Zealand has really established itself as the mecca of Sauvignon Blanc. It has quite a lovely reputation for producing some of the best wines, and most of those come from Marlborough. Sauvignon Blanc pairs well with goat cheese, artichokes, and asparagus, which are often very difficult to pair with a wine. Herbs, salads, vegetarian dishes, and fish and shellfish, which are lightly grilled. So, very light flavored foods. The one we're going to be tasting today is a 2008 Beauchet Bay Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough. I think you'll notice that it's gently aromatic, has almost a grassy nose with some subtle green notes. You might taste a little bit of that chalky character, but it's richly textured and has an excellent concentration. So let's have a sample, shall we? See the green color, can't you? Yeah. It's really a pretty wine. Let's aerate it. Swirl it around your glass. Nice deep breath. nice wine. And you can definitely see how you would take that with a fish. Right. It's a very popular wine. It's not very expensive. Definitely a nice way to go when you're trying out Sauvignon Blanc. And the New Zealand wines are really good in this particular genre. Okay. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you would like to ask before we part ways? No. Yeah, it's a lot to take in at once. You can come back anytime. Oh, you do? Champagnes. Yeah, we can cover those. Absolutely. I'll pencil you in for next week. Great. I had a great time. It was really nice to meet you and to talk about these things. And listen, if you need some direction, would like to call, feel free to do so. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.